why do you need adversity to be great? Say hello to my wife. I'm having what's known as a wardrobe malfunction. She is cutting my hair. This has been a dream of hers.
You've endeared me to your millions of viewers.
To humiliate me on the air.
I always cry even though it isn't allowed. So proud.
You make me want to be a better streamer.
A better scrutiny.
No, definitely not that. Do you need adversity to be great?
Your skill is you tee up your guests and you make them look, so good.
Yeah. Oh, such a good question. Gets me all fired up, man. Such a good interviewer. I'm ready to go. Jump to the screen. But no, so true.
They can't see I'm dancing by myself.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.
It never gets old. I just love that. I'm going to play that for a while. And I love those cuts. I love putting together new intros. And I was just thinking, Graeme's my guest today. If you want to make it on the intro reel of the show, you just have to say nice things about me. It's very Machiavellian. It's Freudian. No, it's not Freudian. It's Pavlovian. I don't know. It's one of the yogurts or one of the dogs. It's something like that. Anyway, guys, happy Thursday. I tend to check because these days we're never quite sure what day it is. It is great to be back. It is great to be sitting down with a futurist. I am not a futurist. I don't even know what the hell. I can't remember what I did yesterday. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. But real futurists are awesome, and I've met Graeme. In fact, this is where I met him. I met him at the Louvre. We were both keynoting an event, maybe one of the coolest places that I've ever keynoted, and I was just blown away by his insight and how he manages to stitch things together, to connect the dots in a beautiful way. One of the things he does, it's kind of like the butterfly effect, the domino effect. He shows how everything is connected, and I think not many people do that, which is, they talk about one thing changing or one trend, but what you really realize is how everything truly is in fact connected and interconnected, and cause and effect. Everything that happens, as they say, every action is matched with an equal and opposite reaction, and so we're going to be talking about that. What else can I tell you? A bunch of things that are interesting. First of all, one of the good things about living in the burbs, look, I will never, ever complain. I will never complain about living in the burbs because it's big and it's beautiful and the grass is green and I can go running, and thank God I'm not trapped in a little apartment. I'm grateful for that. But, with every door, one door opens, another door shuts, or one door shuts, another door opens. In this case, the lawn mowing apparently happens every day at 2 p.m. And I had to shun them, these wonderful guys that mow the lawn, and say, please, no mowing of the lawn at 2 p.m. But now I guess my neighbor was starting it. So these are, first world problems, I guess. It's not a big deal, but it looks like they've subsided. So that's awesome. Happy Decency Day, everyone. I love the fact that every day has a national theme, and what could be more appropriate than Decency Day? I mean, come on. We've just lost that in many respects. The anger, the hatred, the fever pitch, the rhetoric, the agendas, everything has come out of us. We've spewed all of this negativity, and now maybe during the great pause, every day technically should be National Decency Day, don't you think? It is also National Dance Like a Chicken Day. I mean, come on, where the hell did they think of that? So I guess it would be inappropriate if I didn't do the da 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 da, something like that. I don't know, whatever. Is that what you do when you dance like a chicken? I have absolutely no idea, but I did it anyway. So Graeme Codrington will be my guest. He is an author. He's a futurist. He's a speaker. He's a nice guy, and he's pretty damn smart as well. we'll quickly go through our birthdays for today on Facebook. A whole bunch of people, but in particular, I have a whole bunch of people that are very close to me. One of my good friends here in Westport, Howard Zev, it's his birthday today. But most importantly, it is my nephew's 15th birthday. Happy birthday, Benji. In the middle, my brother-in-law, Jacob. Happy birthday, Jacob. And one of my best friends in South Africa, Mark Uriah. Happy birthday, Marky. Mark, Jacob, and Benji. 3 important people in my life. I know it's a little bit of favoritism, a little bit of nepotism to be able to call you out and show you beautiful photos to everyone, but you know what, it's my show and I can do whatever the hell I want. So happy birthday, guys. And then of course on LinkedIn, I didn't forget about you. Happy birthday to everyone that is sheltering in place, that is locked down, that is quarantining. Just know that I got your back and CoronaTV has your back. So I just wanted to announce something special and new, which is CoronaTV is now Corona Radio. So I've recently set up the video show as an audio podcast. So the audio transcript, if you will, is now available on iTunes. I think it's called, I don't even think iTunes exists anymore. I think you have to go to Apple Music or something like that. So if you go now and you search for Jaffe Juice TV, you should be able to find the show and subscribe. And I would love your feedback, guys, in terms of how you'd like that format to play out. So I have a whole bunch of options. You know, option 1, I can just have the interview. So all of this preamble that I'm giving you right now, my seated monologue, all of that would be off, most likely off the show. That's number 1. Number 2 is I can have the whole show, but I can record right at the beginning, just a little clip from me, a little personal message. Hey everyone, it's Joseph Jaffe. How's it going? Today I'm interviewing Graeme Codrington, and that interview will start at 13 minutes and 23 seconds. So you would be able to then, you know, just fast forward and go and listen to Graeme if you didn't want this preamble at the beginning. And then there is a third option, which is when I actually save the file, I can make the file start automatically at the beginning of the interview. And then I suppose if anybody did want to go back, they would have to go back themselves. So I guess those are my 3 options. Would love to hear what you guys have to say. If that would be valuable to you, maybe Graeme will tell me what he thinks, because you know my hosts have been my guests have been amazing. They've also given me advice. You know, I think I may have mentioned this. Marcus Sheridan said, I love the birthday greetings, but you don't have to call out every single person by name, maybe just 1 or 2 people. So go ahead and subscribe if you if you really are such a masochist that you hate yourself so much that this little video daily show is not enough for you. You can actually listen to me when you're going on a run or when you're gardening or weeding or whatever it is that you do to prevent yourself from going crazy. So I just wanted to touch on 2 things. And, you know, in the spirit of not getting political, but at the same time, I don't want to just sweep emotions under the rug. I want to just, you know, still remember it is Decency Day. So I want to be decent. But there were 2 things that are happening today in the United States that are not insignificant. So one is in Wisconsin. The Supreme Court in Wisconsin has overruled their governor, Tony Evers' edict, the stay-at-home extension. And so what has really happened right now is that people have just gone out en masse. And there were scenes of people in bars having a drink, not socially distancing, not wearing masks. And as the governor said, we're the Wild West. The fact remains, as we've seen and as we will see, this means people will die. It's not an if, it's a when, and it's a how many. And all of these, you know, and I don't even want to call them anomalies, but with every state just kind of doing what the hell they want to do without that uniformity and standardization and consistency, what's really happening is the people that did shelter in place, that did do the right thing, that did listen to ultimately what their governor said or even what the federal government said, it's just going to set us back even more. That's my opinion. That's my opinion. And then also today, there is testimony, and this was the prepared testimony in advance that we found out, the ousted chief of of the department that is responsible for rolling out a vaccine to the United States. I want to read to you what he said, and he's testifying today. He said, "Our window of opportunity is closing. If we fail to develop a national coordinated response based on science, I fear the pandemic will get far worse and be prolonged, causing unprecedented illness and fatalities. Without clear planning and implementation of the steps that I and other experts have outlined, 2020 will be the darkest winter in modern history." Now just think about that for a moment. Just let it sink in. What's really happening? And you know, when Graeme comes on the show, and if we get the chance, and hopefully we do, this is not about politics. This is about leadership. This is about organizational structure and process and dynamics. This is about collaboration. This is about communication. This is about all the things that we have to contend with in our daily lives, in our professional lives. And we're just seeing it playing out now in politics and from a governmental level. And what we're seeing is the failing of leadership, and the failing, or the failure to, what we have here is a failure to communicate. What we have here is a failure to coordinate and collaborate. And unfortunately now, the result is not decreased profits or reduced market share. It is loss of life. And it is something that I feel we should stand up and rise up and speak up and do our part as concerned citizens in order to make sure that we let the government know that we are not happy. So my little rant is over. I want to say hello to a few people that have been commenting, like Mr. Steve Garfield. It is good to have you. And my buddy Bob Walheim, all the way from Brazil. Nice to have you on the show. And Bob said, have a happy and decent day. Exactly, my friend. Let's make it a decent, constructive day. It is okay to criticize as long as it is constructive criticism. So it is now time to bring on my guest. And, Graeme, as I said to you, he gave a keynote, I think, after mine. And what I really just loved about him and loved about his keynote was the fact that he actually spoke, I think it was about self-driving cars. And I was so inspired by it, I think I actually wrote about it in Built to Suck. But he showed how self-driving cars is going to have effect and implications on real estate. Why do you need a parking lot anymore in a mall or in an office complex when you're being dropped off by your car? And then he said, well, what happens when ride sharing affects self-driving cars? Less cars on the road. And what happens when all the cars now are self-driving? What will that do to insurance? And maybe you will pay a penalty for manually driving your car. But if you are now subscribing to complete self-driving, do you even need car insurance? And it just got me thinking, as I said, about the domino effect and the butterfly effect. And so, why should I comment on what Graeme said? I may as well just bring him on to the show. Welcome to the show, Graeme.
Hey, Joseph. Nice to be with you on your show.
So that was the influence and the impact that you had on me at that conference. And sometimes I think maybe people like you and I, we get a little bit jaded or skeptical when we see other people like us, thinking, are we going to learn something new in what they say or how they say it? But I certainly learned that from you.
No, well, thank you very much, Joseph. And I'd actually, you've described perfectly what I do. My business card says that I'm a futurist. And a lot of people ask me, well, does that mean you can predict the future? And if only, I wish that I could. Nobody can do that. What a futurist does is we look at trends, we look at systems, we look at patterns, we try and predict what might happen. And two things are useful. The one is to know what's not going to change in the future. So what is just part of the universe and of life and of systems, and you can count on it. And then obviously you also want to know what is going to be unpredictable and disruptive and change in the future. And for me, that's always been the more exciting part, looking at the disruptive. And as you say, that example of driverless cars is one I really enjoy using, because everybody knows that driverless cars are coming, but do we actually think about the systems-wide impact? Do we think about all the ways in which, as you say, there's a domino effect into different parts of society? So that's just always been the way my brain has worked from when I was a kid. And it's just been lucky to be able to build a career around taking those thoughts and insights to companies and corporates and multinationals all around the world, and helping them to think through essentially what happens after what comes next. What comes next is interesting, and that's what's in your strategy document and your budget this year. What happens after what comes next? Well, that's what the futurist job. So love doing it, and always glad to have someone who can appreciate it in the crowd.
Now, in your title, as you can see, it says unlearner, and intuitively, I think I know what that means, but why not ask you what you mean? What is an unlearner?
Well, you know, this is not something I've just put on my card recently, you know, but it is perfect for the COVID crisis times. It actually comes from a book that was written nearly 50 years ago now, in which we're trying to understand what the future was going to be like. In fact, the 2000s, the 21st century was going to be like. And the quote is it stuck with me. And it was that the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read or write, but those who cannot unlearn and relearn in order to learn. And the unlearning is an interesting piece. So I can give you a real life example. Now that we all have to do work from home, I've set up a little home studio like most people have, and I've got a few options. One of them is a green screen like you're using. Another is just this wall behind me here, which is just a nice neutral color, and I can play around with lighting and so on it. And I had to do that quite quickly before lockdown. In South Africa, lockdown, which is where I'm locked down at the moment in my family home in Johannesburg, we haven't been allowed access to building supplies for the last 7 or 8 weeks. Only supermarkets and drugstores have been open. And so we knew that was coming. So I rushed off, bought some paint and some paintbrushes. And I thought, no, this is going to be an easy job. I don't normally do it yourself. So I quickly painted the wall. And it was a pretty rough wall. I've converted an outside kind of storage area into the studio. And I didn't actually do the preparation of the underlying wall as well as I should have. And within a week or two, the paint was peeling through, the underlying paint was peeling through. And that's the best analogy. If you've ever done that stupid shortcut of a do-it-yourself thing like I did, you'll realize that if you don't strip the old paint off, if you don't prepare the underlying surface, then any new thing you put on top of it within a few weeks and months is going to be soiled and messed by the underlying mess that isn't gone. And I mean, Joseph, what an analogy. I mean, you do similar work with businesses around the world. What an analogy to the business world to say you can't just impose new stuff without getting rid of the old stuff first. So I kind of at that, that's something that's been in my mind for a while, but there's the perfect analogy of what an unlearner is. I help business leaders to get rid of the rotten stuff before they try and impose new stuff on it as well.
Right, as opposed to just sweeping it under the rug, or
Exactly.
or just kind of creating layers on top. Layers of fat, layers of fluff, layers of mess.
Well, a great example is right now in this COVID time. I know we can have a quick conversation about Wisconsin and the madness that was there. By the way, America is not unique on this. Vancouver did it last weekend. Adelaide in Australia did it the weekend before, and Santiago in Chile did it 2 days ago. As soon as you give people just a little bit of permission to go and be free, they also happen to add a huge dose of crazy on top of it. And I agree with you completely. We've got to be physically distancing for the next few months. But here's what happened, right? So we're in the middle of the greatest experiment in the future of work ever undertaken in the history of humanity. It's the work from home experiment. And for those states that have got stay-at-home orders, for those countries in the world that are locked down, or whatever the languages that we use, we're all working from home now for a while. What happens if it works? What happens if we love doing this? What happens if this is the new reality? What happens if we never, ever get to meet again at the Louvre? Because we can do these virtual conferences. But here's the problem. So many big corporates that I work with, and I've had lots of requests for help over the last few weeks, is the managers are saying, I don't know how to deal with this, because they don't use this language, but this is their problem. They are used to micromanaging. They would swear blind they're not micromanagers, but they can't stand the fact that they don't know when their employees are starting work, how much time they're actually spending, what they're wearing, even if they're getting out of their pajamas or not. And this is driving some managers crazy. And I think this is an example of unlearning. You can't just take the office home. That's not what a home office is. It's not just your office at home. Working from home is a whole different thing. And if we don't unlearn the mindset of the office, hours, dress code, productivity checks, and so on, if we don't unlearn that, we're going to drive each other crazy. And actually, we're not going to get the benefit of working from home.
So there's something else that I just want to build on top of that, which is the old, again, the unlearning the way that we perceive and price and compensate value creation. And I'm talking about this from an employee standpoint. So I'll give you an example. When you submit a scope of work or a contract to a lawyer, you know exactly what's going to happen. Or if I had to take a step back, what are the odds they're going to give it back to you within 5 minutes to go, yeah, everything looks great, fantastic, good luck. They're not going to do that. They're going to slow it down. They're going to redline it, because that's what value is for them. And they determine their own self-worth and value, and their compensation is predicated on their ability to slow the damn process down and redline the whole document. And that's the thing. It is the equivalent. It is the white collar equivalent of punching in and punching out, and it's not necessary anymore. And the corollary of that, it's not even a corollary, is the commute. So if we think about all of the stuff that we've crammed in and said, this is normal, this is what it is to work. No, it isn't.
Yeah,
there's nothing normal about it.
And for many, many years, there have been people who've been saying, I'd love to work from home. I'd love to try a different way of working. Can I use technology differently? What about trying to incorporate some AI into my work? And around the world, companies have said, no. And it might be IT says no because we can't put the requisite securities on. It might be finance says no because there's a budget implication. We've got to buy you a laptop that can work from home. It might just be your boss that says no. I don't think it'll work, or I don't trust you. Whatever language they've used, you've been told no. Now the amazing thing is, you've been forced to do this, and many of us are discovering we love it. And actually, I think our bosses might discover this works better. So you talked about me and my domino effects and thinking this. My brain can't help it. So what happens, Joseph, if this does work, right? So a few weeks, a few months, however long it takes, we finally getting back into some semblance of normal. And suddenly companies turn around and say, actually, don't come back to work. You're doing brilliantly at home. Your productivity is as good as it's ever been. You seem to be very happy. Anybody want to get into rush hour traffic? No, I didn't think so. Do any of you want to cram onto public transport again? We might still be physically distancing at that stage. And then your bosses might say, you know what? Just stay at home. Actually, now that we've been forced to do it for a few weeks and months, we found out that it's working. So now you've got a whole lot of office places in CBD, central business areas around the world, that are half empty, they're going to say to their landlords, well, I don't want to pay for all of this place, so I'm giving you back 1, 2, 3, 5 floors of the building. Now we're sitting with massively open buildings. We suddenly have reductions of rentals. Construction companies don't need to build new places. Add to that the fact that every single disruption that was coming our way is still coming our way, from driverless cars to artificial intelligence. And you know what? I think we might look back and say that COVID-19 was, yes, it was a thing, but the whole world changed at that moment. And it's not that we just hold on for a few weeks and then we get back to normal after we've dealt with COVID-19. Mm-hmm. No, I think this is a catalyst that will change a whole lot of aspects of our lives and change it forever.
Well, we're going to come back to that, because I know that was the topic that you wanted to focus on, which are some of these permanent changes, that these are not one-offs. But if you look at a common theme, guys, from Wisconsin to leadership, to unlearning, Graeme has very kindly offered in our Zoom room, in our little after show, he's going to be talking a little bit about adaptive leadership. And so if you want to figure out how to unlearn and how to relearn, or how to learn these new skills and what adaptive leadership is, just come and join us afterwards on bit.ly/CoronaTV after show, and that's all lowercase as well. Graeme, one more point to close on this wonderful chapter that we've just been discussing. But I was thinking to myself, behind me, look, I'm actually at the Louvre right now. I know you thought it was a green screen, but I'm actually there right now, and it's very lonely. There's no one else here. But when we built our home, I built this green screen in a little, with a little, blind, like a blind mechanism, so that I could lift it up and bring it down. And I was thinking to myself, again, using your domino effect and your butterfly effect, we're going to have to rethink how we rent and how we build and how we buy and how we live. And there's been a lot of talk about people moving out the city. For many, many reasons. But one of the things now, that when we actually look at an apartment that we want to rent or buy, or a house, we're going to be thinking about a studio. We're going to need some kind of a studio, or some kind of, whether it's lighting, whether it's green screen, in terms of how we portray ourselves, how we are perceived, and how we project ourselves. And so I think you would agree that that's yet another implication that comes out of this.
And let's take that even a step further. So I don't know what is happening in your state when it comes to schooling, but I'm guessing the kids are at home at the moment. And, so I don't like to call it homeschooling, because homeschooling is a very specific thing that's got a whole curriculum and a process, and parents are involved. And it's not crisis schooling only either, because crisis implies that it's a short-term thing and we get over it quickly and we get out of it. So it's a bit cheesy, I suppose, but let's call it corona schooling that most of us parents are doing at the moment. What happens if that's around for 2 years or so? What happens if there's a second wave and a third wave, and we can't, we're a little bit nervous about sending the kids back to school? So if you're thinking about what your house has to look like, you've got to have space for the kids to do schoolwork for a few hours. Even they might go to school only for a few hours every day and then come home. You've got to have space for both parents to have work environments. You've got to have a home studio. You've got to have fiber and smartness. You've got to have soundproofing. There should be home builders sitting around saying, I'm going to be busy for the next 10 years retrofitting houses to look like what we're going to need if this is our new reality. And if anybody doubts that this might be the new reality for a long time, Joseph, you and I are both old enough to remember what it was like to fly on an aeroplane when you would kind of waltz up about 15 minutes before the plane was due to leave.
Right. What's an aeroplane? Sorry, carry on.
So we're going too far back now. But, before 9/11, when you didn't have to take your shoes off and take your belt off and declare all your liquids and everything else, I was watching some movies with the kids recently in the 1980s movies, and they just couldn't believe what airports looked like. I mean, it honestly looked as much science fiction to them in the past as anything does in the future. And so what happens if some of the stuff that's happening now, because we realize we are now so susceptible to global health risks, that everything changes about the way that we go to shopping malls, the way that we fly when we're allowed to fly again. And I just think that we need to move beyond this crisis mindset. I think people have been in for a few weeks and months. Look beyond the craziness of what's going to happen over the next few weeks as we fight out this kind of freedom versus lockdown and health versus the economy. I think that's going to be a short-term thing. But I think there's going to be a long-term change to how the world looks, how our homes look, our offices, our schools, our world looks. And the sooner we get our heads into that space, I think the sooner we find the opportunities and maybe get ahead of our competitors.
Well, let's talk about some of those changes, because your point of view is that this is not, we're not going back to the old way in many respects. What do you think are some of those permanent changes, and what will be the implications of those permanent changes on our lives?
Well, it's very interesting to be speaking to an American about this, because I think this is a very politicized question, bizarrely. As an outsider who has family and friends in America and visits regularly, has clients in America, I'm an informed outsider, but it's very difficult for me to get my head around how much of this sort of conversation becomes so quickly politicized in America. And so recognizing where the question's coming from, you've got to put a few caveats on the answer, because one of the answers I think might be, and this is, I know this is a simplistic answer, but it illustrates the point. We might never shake hands again. At least not with strangers. And we might not go back to hugging people as we greet them. And I think in Europe, you can make that statement and everybody nods and says, yeah, no, that's an important point. We're going to think differently about the public space of health. Whereas, of course, in America, I can easily imagine half of Americans agreeing with me and saying, absolutely, we're never going to shake hands again. And the other half of people saying, I'm going to shake hands with every person I can find because it is my right as an American to shake hands and spread whatever diseases I've got.
Give me handshake or give me death. Sorry, Karen.
Exactly. Yeah. Handshakes or death. And, well, okay, death then, if that's your choice. But so, again, it might be difficult to choose examples that won't immediately polarize an American audience. Hopefully we can get beyond that to recognize that as much as we want to assert something and assert our freedoms, and of course freedom is important, I actually think there's a more powerful thought of saying, surely it's your patriotic duty to protect yourself and your family and your community from this virus. So surely you would be imposing physical distancing for a while and public health. So all of that's a little bit of preamble, and maybe more preamble than was needed to answer your question. But I certainly think that we're going to see, we've already talked about the fact that our offices might be more empty, that there might be a lot more work from home. I think there's going to be a lot less travel. Not that it'll go to zero and people will still go on holiday and so on. But, I think, Joseph, we've had a lot of clients in the past who would never have dreamed of putting us on stage in a Zoom call. Or a hologram version, or whatever the future might take. We were all flown across to Paris, put up in a beautiful hotel, and all the rest. And of course, that's a lovely experience. But I think a lot of clients of ours will realize you can have very close to that experience in terms of the value this way. Digitally, and there might not be as many international conferences, there might not be as many regional sales meetings and sales travel. So I think at least for a decade, there will be a significant shift in our thinking about travel and whether it's necessary or not. Then just a final thought. I know we're watching the time, and maybe we can get people across into the after show chat and talk about the leadership implications to this. But just think about education. So, I mean, you've got sons, I've got daughters. Mine are at university, yours are at school. They're away from their school at the moment. They're doing some stuff online. They realizing that their teacher at the school is not quite as good as the teacher at the other school. So they're actually, and this is genuinely happening, they're choosing to bunk out of their own teacher's class and go and get better, Khan Academy and online MOOCs and things. If a 14-year-old kid can work out that my teacher's not the best teacher in the world and I have access to better teachers online, what's that going to do for colleges and universities? What's that going to do for L&D departments and HR departments and training experts back at the office when you get back to the office? I think we're going to be a lot more discerning about what information we get and which classes we're going to and so on.
I'm pausing you for a second because my mind is expanding and I just need to let it contract a little bit. But I wanted to there were a couple of things you said that I was thinking Graeme, we could do this all day. It could be like a lob, like a desk. So I'll give you two little builds on that. One for airline travel and one just a little, kind of maybe slightly snarky idea with respect to teaching. But first of all, I mean, if you think about Qatar, or as South Africans would say, Qatar, or we say Qatar, but Qatar Airlines, they've got their Q suites. Well, that's going to become the new business and first class. It's almost, and even in economy where you'll pay more for more hygiene and it won't be so much about privacy, it'll be hygiene. And then the other thing I was thinking of as you were talking about education is we'll coin a new phrase, you and I, today, which is comparative teaching, right? Instead of comparative shopping for teaching, comparative teaching. But that's also interesting. Just to tell you something just a little bit more lighthearted, that I don't know whether this was a TikTok. Is TikTok even a meme? I think TikTok itself is a meme. But there were a bunch of these kids, and what they were doing is they were zooming into classes. They weren't even at the school. And so they were kind of raising their hand and asking the teacher a question. And the teacher was like, yes, Graeme, are you in my class? I'm like, dude, I've been in your class, how are you? But it's also interesting just to see the creativity coming out of this space. And in some cases, as they say, we're being laughed at as opposed to with. But continue. I just wanted to add a few thoughts.
No, but that's great. And in fact, that might be a great way to kind of sum up. As you say, we could talk for hours on this topic, and kind of my head's exploding every day, all day, because of this world that we live in. Almost the world I've lived in my head for so many years, trying to help people understand disruptive change, is now reality. So I'm almost like a kid in a toy store, a little bit in that sense. But just in case there are a few teachers who might have thought we were being snarky about teachers, I'm not at all. I think that's a great example. What you've just said is a really great example of what I think everybody needs to realize. First of all, every disruption that was coming your way 6 months ago is still coming your way. Artificial intelligence, automation, robotics, systems change, fourth industrial revolution. It's all still coming. In fact, a lot of it has been accelerated. So let's take teaching as an analogy. Every day for the last 50 years, 1 million mathematics teachers have spent an hour handcrafting, custom designing a lesson for tomorrow. Why? Why would you do that when we can find the math teacher in the world who teaches that portion of the curriculum perfectly, brilliantly, and spectacularly? And why don't we just record them and stream it to all the other classrooms? And then the math teachers can take a break from their preparation. We don't have to have a custom designed math class in every single schoolroom in every single part of the world.
So I will see your idea, and I will raise you something else. What if we end up with an open market for rock star teachers, where where truly teachers can be paid their worth by being the best teacher in the world in math or at that, or maybe that math problem or that specific aspect of the curriculum, and then let them be bought and sold on the open market.
And, so the sky becomes the limit when you step back and say, here's an opportunity. We've been given, yes, it's a disaster. It's horrific. It's a health nightmare. It's an economic, it's a hit in the gut. Yes, we know all of that. However, it's also an opportunity to do a reset. It's an opportunity to accelerate the disruptions that some industries have needed for a while. And that's everything from healthcare to transportation, and education to management. And let's not waste this opportunity. You know the cliche, you don't waste a good crisis, but let's not waste the opportunity of a reset here. And so don't desperately try and get back to normal in the next few weeks and months, but ask yourself what is going to emerge and what could emerge. If we've got the greatest blank slate that history's ever offered any generation, what do we plan to write on it? And that's now up to us. And you know what, to be honest, I don't want to write on it, give me my freedom, I demand to go to a bar. I want to write on it, here's how we redo education. Here's how we redo transport. Here's how we redo health. Here's how we redo community. Here's how we redo leadership. Let's make this world a better place. Am I ridiculously idealistic and optimistic? Maybe. But if I'm right, this is a wonderful opportunity that we've got.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly articulated. And in a way, what you're saying is to resist going back to normal, resist the going back to our bad habits, embrace this new change. It's a fantastic statement. And I just wanted to end today by going through, there's some really great comments I've been seeing below. Bob Farnham spoke about the origins of the handshake that was ready to, it was a symbol of peace, to basically demonstrate no one was carrying a weapon. And then he said, is there a new way to come up with a symbol of peace, which I think is very relevant considering it is Decency Day. And Steve Garfield said, this is an amazing conversation. Thank you, which obviously means he's clearly only referring to you, Graeme, but that's okay. John Cass actually said something really interesting.
No, hang on, Joseph, you can't pass there. I've got to try and get into your opening sequence. So here's how I'm going to do that. I'm going to say, you know what? It's only possible to have amazing answers if you have an amazing interviewer who asks brilliant questions that get the best out of you. And Joseph is definitely the best.
Stop. No, please continue. Stop. Well, I think you may have worked your way in there. John actually said something interesting. He said maybe it wasn't such a good idea to have the in-person conference, and we're realizing that so much of it in a way wasn't necessary. And he referenced the Clue Train manifesto.
Clue Train manifesto. I mean, bring that back. Surely that should be trending by now, because that was one of the original documents that said, hey, guys, we can build a better world and a different world. So absolutely. If you don't know what the Clue Train manifesto is, Google it and read it. You'll love it.
And I thought it was interesting, just John, just to respond to you very quickly, one of the things that I think is quite important to recognize is, in fact, the in-person conference was really not about the conference at all, the content, which could be delivered virtually. It's about the networking and the relationship building. And I would say, Graeme, the concept of the flipped classroom, which is gaining a lot of momentum right now, could in fact become the new conference, that all the sessions are delivered virtually in advance, and then you come together and have a few parties and lunches and dinners, and are productive in between, but then make use of the face-to-face.
Exactly, and that's just to bring that right into the COVID world that we're living in now. I'm suggesting to clients, why would you want to live stream me doing a keynote presentation? There's so much can go wrong with a live stream. Timing can go wrong. We can be buffering and all the rest. Let me pre-record my session. You let everybody know that the video is available for 3 or 4 days, and then we'll come in a Zoom session and have a conversation like we're going to have in the after show now.
Right.
And so why wouldn't we do that 2 years from now? We'll send our videos. You know, Joseph, you and I, we got home studios. We can record our videos, send them to delegates in advance. Then we fly out to the conference and we have a 1 hour Q&A, live Q&A, or we sit around at the pub at the conference, go and sit at the restaurant at the Louvre and have a conversation. I think that would be much, much, much better value. And that really is what I'm trying to get across to people. Don't just desperately hope that we get back to how things were. Imagine what could be and how much better it could be after this crisis is over.
I told you he was smart. He is smart. And come on over to bit.ly/CoronaTV after show, where Graeme and I will continue the conversation. Graeme, if you wouldn't mind, take 30 seconds and tell us where people can find out more about you and follow you, etc.
Sure. If you have been concentrating on the screen, you just go to Graeme Codrington, and if you've seen the screen, you'll know how to spell my name. If you're listening, just to tell you, I was listening to your monologue up front. If you're listening later to, what was it, Jaffe Juice TV on the podcast, and there's no visuals in front of you, just have a look at the show notes and you'll see how to spell my name. You'll find me wherever you look. So YouTube, LinkedIn, I don't do TikTok. But I am on Instagram, and it's just /Graeme Codrington as you see it, and you'll find me. I think I'm fairly easy to find, and the only Graeme Codrington around.
All right, Mr. Graeme Codrington, I will see you soon. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks, Joseph. Thanks for having me, and we'll see everybody in the after room. We're going to be talking about leadership and how leadership needs to be adaptive and what that means. I think you'll enjoy the conversation in the after room as well.
Listen, if people don't come to the after show now after that plug from Graeme, then they're never coming. But we have this beautiful little intimate gathering. And maybe what I should be saying is please don't come to the Zoom room and the after show because, you know, we want to keep our little intimacy. But come, don't come. You know what I'm saying. I will be back tomorrow with David Meerman Scott. It's going to be another fantastic conversation. Thank you for giving me some of your time today. It is much appreciated, and I hope I added value and brought a smile to your day. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.